Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Can everyone see my screen and hear me clearly? My name is Jose Aranda. I work at the library at Doña Ana Community College. And today's presentation will be on how to identify fake news. If you have comments or questions, please hold those until the end of the presentation. There should be no more than 30 minutes. But if there's something pressing, you can chat a question. My colleague Susan Bontley will be monitoring that chat, and she can provide you with quick answers if those are the types of questions. If not, we'll address those at the end. And again, this will be recorded and made available at a later date. We will have a live guide, which is a specific website within the library domain that will be addressed to this presentation. And we invite you to browse the other presentations we've had so far this year. A couple of weeks ago was on BrainFuse, the online tutoring service offered through the state. And in the summer, we had a series, lots of them. So I invite you to check those out. My contact information is on this slide, my email at least. And at the end, I'll provide you with the library's email and phone number. We will begin. So I think what's important to do is to start off with the definition. I think a lot of us may have our own conception of what we think of when we hear fake news. Fake news became a popular phrase during the last presidential campaign, so about 4 years ago, and it's been popularized by our current president. But this is the definition that I'm going to use today, just to set the stage of what I mean by fake news. So fake news are fabricated stories or distortion of real events, real stories, but that are meant to mislead. There is misinformation, and then there is disinformation. The difference between misinformation and disinformation is the intention. Disinformation is when you are meaning to mislead, and that's what I meant. Many times these fake news are somehow associated or affiliated with political propaganda. They're trying to sway you one way or another. So I think the solution to this and the objective of this presentation would be for you to learn some steps that you can take so that you individually can think critically about the news you are exposed to and make up your own mind as to the validity of it. And some of the steps that I'll show you will detail just how to do that. So I did not create these 8 steps. I took these from the association that's listed there in this slide, the International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. I've seen a couple of renditions of these steps with 1 or 2 less, but they're generally along the lines that we at Doña Ana Community College have always taught our students in how to evaluate information in general, and specifically how to determine credible sources. So just some background information on these steps that I'm about to talk in detail about. The first one is called consider the source, okay? Whenever you're reading any news, you should always consider the source. There are some sources that are more reputable than others. There are some sources that have more credibility. Which ones those are, those would be another conversation. And of course, there's always preferences. And especially if you look at cable news, there's more to it than just that. There's a lot of business and ratings and sponsorship involved. So there's a lot of factors to consider, but more or less you should know which ones are the more common, more popular sources out there. And if not, you can always ask. So what I guess the key takeaway from this step would be is if you come across a news story from a source you have never heard about, you should question it. And in this instance, checking the URL means checking where the story you're reading from is coming from. In other words, what host website is providing you with that news story. And you should investigate who they are, what they are, what they do, what their missions are, what their mission is. One of the most important things to do is to find out who they are. See if you can find a contact us link or tab or button, or an about tab or button. Many of the credible sources that are not hiding who they are, especially online, should have an about us. And what you should see below here in this slide is just a caption that I took of a website that does just that. Okay, there should be no secret who's providing you with information online. If it is, if they're hard to get hold of, if they're hard to determine who they are, to identify, if they don't list who they are outright, you should question that. So this step is asking you to do that. You should always look for who it is that's providing you with the source. Link to the news specifically. The next step is read beyond the headline. Sometimes headlines, in fact, many times headlines are written to get clicks, to get your attention. So they will write it in a way that's interesting. So do not take just what the headline says at face value. You need to obviously read the story that it's referencing. So keep that in mind. Headlines don't always tell the whole story, or they're written in a way that they want you to click on them. So keep that in mind. Another thing would be for you to do to verify the information is correct, is to cross-reference that story with other sources. So for example, so if you hear something like, so I remember back in the last presidential election and currently too, when I saw that link, I quickly went to other sources that I'm comfortable with, that I know are credible, that I use more often, to try to find that story. Is Social Security being terminated? Are they making these changes? I couldn't find it. So that's what cross-referencing means. If it's an accurate, credible news story, you should be able to find it in other websites from other sources. Okay? If it's unique, then that should be a red flag. Next step is check the author. This is kind of like checking the source, but more specifically on the person that wrote the story. And you can do that doing any of the things that are listed here on the slide, right? You can do an author search online with their name to find out who they are, who they work for, who have they worked for in the past, what stories have they written or covered, what their credentials are, if any, if they're an expert. Sometimes journalists can be experts in certain areas, for example, climate change or sciences, for example. So these are some of the questions, not all, but some of the questions you should be thinking about when verifying the author's credentials. It's very important. And many times they don't have to be professional journalists or experts to write and to write truthfully, but they should still state who they are, right? So if you come across an anonymous piece, that should be a red flag. Why are they anonymous? And if they are laymen, meaning they're not a professional journalist or expert, they should claim that as well. So checking the author. The next step is what's the support? Okay, so whatever references in the news stories are being made, they should be independently verified. This is what journalists do. Okay, so you too can do this yourself, especially if in the story they provide links. A lot of times they'll reference another story, another website, something like that, and they'll even make it clickable, meaning they're linking that source inside the news story. So all it takes is for you to click on it. Click on those links. Make sure what they're saying is accurate. Sometimes if they are misleading, they will make it look like they are providing credible references within the text, and you click on it and you're surprised to where it takes you. So please take this extra step in verifying what it is they're saying in the stories. And if they're not clickable or linkable, you should still make note of the references they are making, and then make an independent search yourself on whatever title, author, or source they're talking about. Okay. This is an important step in verifying what you read in the story to help you determine its credibility. So here in the picture, I have just an example of what one might look like. So you see here in the paragraphs, actual links. They are the ones in the color blue that are referencing these outside sources. Step 5, check the date. Okay, it's very important, especially with nowadays with many news sources being published strictly online, meaning they don't have a print counterpart. And this happens many times a day. It adds up. So you want to make sure you can verify the date. And here's just a simple picture of where that might be. Many times the date's up on top. Sometimes it can be at the bottom. If you can't verify the date, again, it could be should be a red flag for you to investigate why there is no date. And then if you can't find the date, you should then maybe ask them if there's a contact us button, so forth and so on. You see the evolution of some of these steps, how they play in with each other when you're trying to determine validity. So the date is very important. One thing about old news stories is that sometimes they are used again and again to drive a point, and so you need to be aware of that. How relevant is the information you're reading should be a question you should ask yourself. And if it's something really old, you should wonder why they're referencing an older story, especially if it's something current. It should be new information. Just another red flag to be cognizant of by checking the date. Is this some kind of joke? That's step 6. So there's a lot of stuff online that is meant to be not taken seriously, that is meant to be satire, for example, or just a joke, especially on social media. I don't know if we're doing a good job in deciphering some of those or not. So just keep that in mind, that there may be things out there, especially during the election year, that are just meant to be a joke. I don't know if some of you are familiar with The Onion. It is a very old website or company. I'm not sure they're how big of a company they are, but they've been around for a long time, and they still fool people. If you don't know about them, they are a satire website, meaning they're not accurate, but they make fun of real news and events, and they have duped many people, many people, obviously, who don't know who they are, as taking the news stories they publish online as accurate. So that's just one example, The Onion. I'm sure there's many more, but just keep that in mind. Is this some kind of joke? If you question that, maybe some of the gears will turn in your head about some other things to look for or to ask or just to be conscious of, I think is useful in determining fake news. This next one is check your biases. We all have them, and sometimes it's difficult to identify what they are and how they affect us. So I took from Lewis Kelly here, as you can see on the slide, some of the steps he mentions that you can do, but by no means is this exclusive way to do this. There are several ways you can check your own beliefs and biases and how to manage them. I'm sure there's a lot of professors and classes on campus that talk about this and that are better experts of it than I am. I just wanted to bring this to your attention, this notion of that we all have biases, and they do affect how we view the world in general, but specifically how we search for information online. So it's an important step to be aware of. And if you need more information on this, I advise you to look more into this aspect of how do you look for your own biases, and how can you manage that. And the last step, consult an expert. Okay. Ask a librarian or check with fact-checking websites is the advice we really espouse. So here's a picture of the DACC Library's homepage, where you will find not only links to all the resources that we have available for you to use and do research independently, but also to ask us questions either through chat email, or a telephone call. So we ask you to take that additional step of asking someone for help. Even if you're almost certain of your determination, this won't hurt. And we can show you how to, if you're not looking for a librarian, consult. You can ask for other experts to help them with the consultation, but also some of the fact-checking websites, and that's what I'm going to show you next. So those were the 8 steps on how to identify fake news. Now I'm going to show you, I think, 5 fact-checking websites that you can use to help you in this quest to identify fake news and verify information that you read online. These are the fact-checking websites. I just realized I have them open on my web browser, but I think I'm going to have to stop sharing and then go to them. So let me quickly just run through what they are and then switch to the actual websites. Okay, so the first one is Factcheck.org, a project of the Annenberg Public Policy Center in Pennsylvania, a nonpartisan, nonprofit consumer advocate for voters that aims to reduce the level of deception and confusion in U.S. politics. So this one obviously focused with politics. That's factcheck.org. The next one is Snopes.com. You may have heard of them. They've been around for a while. They're quite popular. Their focus is on debunking urban legends. The third one is Politifact.com, a fact-checking journalism website. The fourth one is Fact Checker from the Washington Post. And the last one is newslit.org, a news literacy project, nonpartisan, national educational nonprofit organization that provides programs and resources for educators, the teaching and learning of news and information literacy. I'm going to switch sides to quickly show you what each of those websites look like, and then I'll return because I have one more slide. The first website is factcheck.org. This is what it looks like. Again, the Annenberg Public Policy Center. Some of these have real neat tools and tabs that already have topics assigned to them. Easy clicks for you to ask questions or search for questions that have already been posted. There's the About Us that I talked about earlier, Ask a Question, some articles. So that's factcheck.org. This one is Snopes. Okay, we're debunking daily. Okay, so you can add your email to their list, subscription list if you want. Again, they have topics organized for you, and they also list the most common rumors online right now and things like that. That's Snopes.com. Third one is Politifact from the Poynter Institute. Okay, a lot of the same features. And if you're wondering why are they asking for money, because many of them are nonprofit organizations, kind of like Wikipedia. So they depend on user donations. The fourth one was Fact Checker from the Washington Post. And the last one is the News Literacy Project. This was more for educators, but nonetheless, I think one of these 5 should be able to assist you, but they're not exclusive. They're not exclusive. I'm sure there are other ones out there, and if you know of them, please share those. And there's additional information. There's additional resources out there. These are just a couple that I have come across. First one is a website from PEN America. Its focuses on writing. And the next one is actually a documentary. Canopy is a vendor that the library subscribes to. So by being a DACC student, you have the ability to create an account through Canopy and then have access to all their films and documentaries. And this is one documentary they have about fake news. That is the end of my presentation. I hope it was helpful for you. I hope you learned something that you could use and apply. We welcome feedback. Like I said at the beginning of the presentation, we will have a live guide, which is a website dedicated to fake news, and this is the link to that. If it's not already up, it will be, along with a recording of this presentation. And in summary, fake news can be political propaganda. Always be vigilant and check your sources, and especially be thinking critically. Consider the source and consult an expert. Thank you very much. So in October, Susan will be having a series of various research-related topics. The first one will be on October 6th, selecting credible resources. So there are 4 in that series, all in the month of October. We invite you to join us. Keep an eye out for the invitation and email in the hotline and wherever else you found out about this presentation. Once again, we thank you for joining us.